topic for today's webinar is the Himalayan geoparks, geoheritage, including archaeological and cultural landscape. Now, what are geoparks? Let me give a brief introduction for the benefit of those who are not very conversant with the concept of geoparks. Geoparks are geographical areas where sites and landscapes of international geological significance are managed with a holistic concept of protection, education, and sustainable development. Through geoparks, we enhance awareness and understanding of key issues facing society, such as using earth resources sustainably, mitigating the effects of climate change, and reducing natural disaster-related risks. By raising awareness of the importance of the area's geological heritage in history and society today, geoparks give local people a sense of pride in their region and strengthen their identification with the area. This stimulates the creation of new local enterprises, new jobs, and high quality training, even as new sources of revenue are generated through geotourism, while the geological resources of the area are protected. Well, friends, although hundreds of geoparks have been established across the globe, we do not have a single, I repeat, a single UNESCO Global Geopark in our country. This in spite of India being an ancient civilization and having several geoheritage sites with immense potential. So let us strive together to establish at least some geoparks in our country. Today's webinar, friends, is a humble beginning, baby steps in this direction. Now I have great three speakers today, Dr. Om Bhargava, Dr. A.K. Biyani, and Dr. Ritesh Arya. First, Professor Dr. Om Bhargava. He has been an illustrious geologist with the Geological Survey of India, and he has worked and contributed immensely in Himachal, Kashmir, Uttarakhand, and Bhutan. He was a visiting professor at the Vienna University, and presently he is an honorary professor at Punjab University and also an INSA honorary professor. Welcome to you, Professor Bhargava sir. Then we have Professor A.K. Biyani. He is an MTech from Sagar University, an MPhil from JNU, and a TPhil from Garhwal University. He joined the academics at the DBS PG College in Dehradun in 1978 and retired as its principal and professor of geology in 2019. Deeply interested in academics, he has published more than 80 papers, guided 12 doctoral scholars, and written a book on the dimensions of Himalayan geology. Presently, he is a trustee of the Obergefell Rangarao Trust for Geosciences in Dehradun. He takes great interest in writing popular geological articles for science magazines and newspapers. A very warm welcome to you, Professor Biyani sir. And then we have Dr. Ritesh Arya. Very nicely, he belongs to Kasauli, on which he will be speaking today in Himachal. He has a PhD in geology from Punjab University. He started his career as a hydrogeologist in the groundwater organization, Government of Himachal Pradesh. He developed a conceptual model to explain the occurrence and movement of groundwater in the Himalayan. Well, he quit the government job in 1996 to set up his own company, Arya Drillers. I recall talking to him several years ago when we had to take out lake sediment course. Well, that's a different matter. Providing potable water to Tibetans in Ladakh was his first project on a no water, no money basis. For the past 23 years, he has been working on the same aspect of potable water for army and civil population in Ladakh. And this endeavor, friends, has helped him enter the Guinness Book of World Records for exploring and drilling the highest artesian well in the world. He has been hailed as the incredible waterman. Welcome to you, Dr. Arya. Now, just a few general points about the webinar. First, I request the presenters to limit your presentations to 20 minutes. And so I will alert you after 15 minutes, once again after 18 minutes, all right? So please cooperate with me. And the discussion is limited to 10 minutes. If it goes beyond that, we can always do that on our WhatsApp group and also through email. Participants, those of you who joined us on Jitsi can send your questions as messages. If you have any issue or question, then raise your hand, not physically, but by clicking the hand symbol on your screen. Kindly mute your microphone and camera. I repeat, mute your microphone and camera at all times except when you're speaking. And those of you who are using YouTube, you can email your questions to Ravi Wundavalli, RAVI @yahoo.com. So with these brief words of introduction, I would like to say that in our Indian culture, when you start a new program, you always chant Om. So let's start with Om, Dr. Om Bhargavaji, the first presenter. Maybe request to you to give your presentation, please.
Pin Valley is a tributary of the Spiti River. Pin Valley was declared a national park in January 1987 due to its unique fauna and alpine flora. Pin River takes off from the eastern slope of the Pin Parvati Pass. At this pass, the Precambrian Vaikuntham group rocks are exposed. Vaikuntham group rocks contain early Paleozoic granites, and its rate of metamorphosis, which is the amphibolite species at the bottom, gradually decreases to a stop to green-schist facies, and is overlain by low-grade green-schist to anti-metamorphosed Titian sediments of Ediacaran age, which is called a Patal Formation. The contact of the Titian sediments with the Vaikuntham rock is variously considered as gradational, tectonic, and non-conformity. It is considered gradational because apparently both the rocks, the sequences, have a similar grade of metamorphosis, which I think is because of the tertiary metamorphosis which has homogenized the entire contact all over. And I called it non-conformity because of the contrasting deformation pattern between the two. At places it is detached, so what you call as the basement cover detachment, which has been called as South Tibetan detachment fault. This South Tibetan fault, I don't think is a universal thing as most. The Cambrian Gonzalo Formation group. The upper part of Patal Formation develops carbonate beds along with the shales, and that part is very rich in trilobites. The upper limit of the Patal, this Gonzalo Formation is middle Cambrian, that is Julian stage. The upper Cambrian is missing throughout the Himalaya. The Cambrian Gonzalo Formation, which is part of the Hemanta group, is overlain along an angular unconformity by the Ordovician sequence. This angular unconformity is attributed to the Urgia orogeny, which is associated with the emplacement of lower Paleozoic granites and also metamorphosis. The Ordovician sequence commences with a reddish conglomerate overlain by quartz arenite. Most of the people, workers, regard it of freshwater origin, mainly probably because of red color. But the quartz arenites of this Ordovician sequence, that is Tango Formation, is well renowned, and that is where the process takes place only in the marine environment and the beach. The Tango Formation in upper part gathers carbonate beds and passes into a thick carbonate sequence, which is a sort of build-up of Cartier to Van Gogh age. The build-up is made by corals, stromatoporoid, algae, and bryozoa. The Tarchier formation is distal formation succeeded by the Middle Devonian Muth formation along very sharp contact. The thickness of Tarchier formation all over the Spiti Azazkar basin is highly variable because of pre-Muth erosion. The late Silurian and part of Devonian, Lower Devonian is absent along this contact. The Muth formation in upper part includes some carbonate beds, and that is the beginning of the Dippak formation. But there is an alternation of quaternite, Muth-like quaternite, carbonate, and finally passing into carbonate, which you can see on the left side of the figure. In the shallower part of the basin, the Dippak formation includes gypsum, which is almost workable, but because of the logistics in high altitude terrain, it has not been mined so far. This sequence is called the Dippak formation of Tornesian age. The core formation and the overlying conglomerate, which was called as Permian conglomerate, these two are absent in the Pin Valley. The Dippak formation directly rests over the Gachang formation of Archean Sacramentian age. This is what was earlier called as calcareous sandstone. And this calcareous sandstone of the Gachang formation is overlaid along with its conformity by the Vichopingian, in old terminology, Sulfian black shale of Bungri formation. Along this contact, the middle Permian is absent. In Kashmir, this interval is represented by Panjal volcanics. The latest Permian, Changsinghyang, is also absent throughout the Spiti. The black Permian sequence is abruptly overlaid by the Lenang supergroup. Between these two occurs a thin ferruginous layer. You can see in this photograph from distance black shales and suddenly, abruptly, some light colored rocks which are the Lenang supergroup. The left side photographs show the ferruginous layer between the Bungri or the black shales and the Meakin formation, that is the lower Triassic. And you can see how thin it is, and in some cases it is still thinner, but nevertheless present in all the sections. On the right side you will see a typical sequence of the Triassic or the Lenang group. Yellow dots show the contact between the Indian-Oroquian boundary. In fact, the Indian-Oroquian boundary is best developed in Muth, and we tried our best to declare it a global stratotype section, but well, the international politics was such that Chinese were able to put their foot down, and the emphasis shifted to some other things. This is a general view of Lenang supergroup. The steep slope of the black shale is Indian-Oroquian Meakin formation. Gentle earthy color slope is Ladinic Kaga formation. The steep slope above is Ladinic Karnic Chumir formation, followed by grey shale, which is we call as Rama formation. And onwards, the sequence is not seen in this section. The Lenang supergroup, in fact, begins with a short duration shallow, and then there is a rapid deepening up to the Karnic, and gradually there is a shallowing, and by the time you come to the upper part, that is middle Norian, coral reef is developed throughout the Spiti Valley, and it's a subtidal one. It's not very high energy reef, built by the corals, stromatoporoid, sponges, and very little algae. An interesting aspect of the Pin Valley are, some first order topography. The Yengas folds are still preserved as they are, and not much erosion has taken place. So you see the anticlinal hills, the synclinal valleys, and the bottom right left hand side you see the folds which along which the physiographic surfaces are parallel, showing that no erosion has taken place or little erosion has taken place after the folding had taken place. And the left side you see is mainly an anticline, but at the top a valley is getting developed. So this is what you call the development or modification of first order topography, getting into a mature topography. This you find only in the younger folds. When you go to the earlier generation, I mean it may be the same continuous deformation, but the first order topography is confined to the last generation of fold, and the earlier folds they show a mature topography. For example, you see on the right side is the Chikkim peak with the Chikkim syncline. It's a Chikkim synclinal area, which is a very distinct topographic feature of Spiti Valley. From Kyoto onwards till the Spiti River joins the Parechu, we see a series of lake beds, and at few places I was able to see the left side photograph is a landslide over which the lacustrine sediments have been deposited. And since this lake bed is so much widespread, I thought that it must be because of a huge earthquake that so much of landslides were generated, blocking the Spiti River and forming natural dams in which the lake sediments are deposited. And if you see the right side photograph towards the upper part, other parts also, but particularly the upper part, you see soft sediment deformation, which indicates that even after landslide, the earthquakes continued, and there were a series of earthquakes which deformed the lake sediments. It's not in Spin Valley, but close by in the Spiti Valley, we have Thabo Monastery, which is considered to be more than 1,000-year-old. In 1962, when I first visited, it was in a state of neglect, with water seepage and everything. The paintings were almost covered. It was the Japanese, you must give credit to Japanese, who came and restored. So you can see beautiful paintings inside Thabo Monastery, murals, and rightly people call Thabo as Ajanta of the Himalaya. Other monasteries also. On the left top is the Dhankar Gompa, situated on the morainic material, and on the right is Ki Gompa on Tropitis limestone. And Ki Gompa is a sort of university where the Lama at a very young age, they come and live there in a sort of hostel. And after graduation or complete training, they are dispersed to different parts of Spiti, Ladakh, to different monasteries and become Lama there. This, especially the Ki monastery of Ki Gompa, is fully supported by the solar energy donated by the Japanese. And at the bottom left you see the Bungri monastery, which is situated in the Pin Valley only. It is also considered to be 500 to 600-year-old monastery, but the building is rather new. Concluding, I would like to just mention a few things. One is that the Kurgyak orogeny was responsible for the angular conformity between the Cambrian and the Ordovician. And this was felt all over the Himalaya. The Blorian early Paleozoic granites were associated with this event, and at many places we are able to find the metamorphosis of this age. Another break which is very prominent is between the Silurian and the Devonian. This was earlier not known, and similarly the break between the lower Permian and the upper Permian, which was also not known, but it is also a very prominent break throughout the Himalaya, and where Otherwise, other places, it's Panjal volcanics in Kashmir and Zanskar are developed. Thank you.
So I call upon Dr. Ritesh Arya to make his presentation on the Kasauli treks and traverses. Yes, I can see.
So, good evening, everybody. My
Good
talk
evening.
is to hello. So, my talk is today about Kasauli geoparks in Northwest Indian Himalayas. So, Kasauli is situated right here in between, sandwich between Chandigarh and Shimla, and this is the cross section of the entire Himalayas. This is Chandigarh, Kasauli, Shimla. This is Kaza, and this is Ladakh. And this is the panoramic view of the Kasauli hill. This is the school where I studied, the cantonment school. This is the playground, army cantonment, and this is how the Kasauli hills look like when you are traveling from Chandigarh. So this is Parwanu, Pinjore, famous for archaeological sites, the stone tools, and we have Kalka, we have Ghaggar, which is tributary of Saraswati River, the Saraswati civilization. So foothills of Kasauli has a lot to do with our early civilizations. So this is Ghaggar tributary entire showing. Now this is when we were small child. I belong to Kasauli, and here we see the famous peak. This is the Kasauli hill, the Monkey Point. We have this Monkey Point, and it is famous because it has something to do with Ramayana times when Hanumanji was carrying Sanjeevani Booty from Himalayas. His first step was here, and from here he took that flight to rescue Rama. And so this top of the hill is almost like a foot of of a human being. And later on, this temple was constructed, and we have Air Force Station here. So this is the ancient connection. This is when we used to go to our home or to the from the school or vice versa. These were the roads which we used to walk. These are heritage market now, and they derive this heritage status from the roads which were built about 100 more than 100 years ago, and still nothing has been changed. No money has been spent on their repairs. Still, this entire geological knowledge have saved hundreds of rupees. Another important institute is the Central Research Institute. Here my father used to work, and this was famous for being the Kasauli Pasteur Institute, the Louis Pasteur Institute, and it was dedicated to do research on immunology and virology. And if things would have gone right, this institute would have been the pioneering institute to fight COVID-19. But unfortunately, politics and all played role, and we are this institute is in a very bad shape. Another important feature which I remember as a child was these tanks. These tanks were constructed in 1900s, early 90s. So these were made by the Britishers when they started expansion and established the cantonments and the first cantonments in the Himalayas. So what they did was they collected all the waters from North Spring and South Spring, and these waters were collected in these tanks, and then they were pumped from here to the Kasauli town. So this was quite interesting aspect, and still Kasauli town feeds water, gets water from these water tanks only. The other important aspect which I remember is the Kasauli brewery. This was built very adjacent to these water tanks, and this was built by Edwin Dyer in 1820s, and later on they wanted to build the best Scottish whiskey in Asia here, and the tradition continues here. They have very good brands, which still continues. But another important, this has some connection with our independence, and that is his son, Edward's son, was Reginald Dyer, who was the brigadier when the massacre, and he ordered that shootout at Jallianwala Bagh on 30th April on Baisakhi Day, where more than 10,000 people were there, and they were just massacred like anything. Thousands were lost their lives, and that was the history about this. And this was known as Dyer Machin breweries. Later on, Machin came in, and history goes by that when Nehru was visiting Shimla and he was asked to visit this brewery after independence, so he stopped. He refused to visit that because that name Dyer was there. So since it was bought by Mohan, so they changed the name Mohan Machin Limited. So that was how it got its name as Mohan Machin Limited. Sanatorium, and now they have this Mohan. They have spent a lot of money from CSR, and they have constructed this heritage museum depicting the Vedic and Vedic heritage. They have displayed it very well in that museum. Another important building was the sanatorium building. All the TB patients were miraculously cured by the sandstone walls and the pines there. So these were the memories I had when I was a child. And then when I left Kasauli for higher educations, I went to DAV College, and then I had no idea what to do. Then incidentally, I just happened to be in the geology department because someone told me that is the best place you will get admission there if you get admission nowhere. That is how I had landed in geology department, and I was lucky. When I first entered, Professor Ravinder Kumar was taking this class, and he told me, his words were like that: H.B. Medlicott in 1864 discovered ill-preserved fossilized leaves from Kasauli.
Hello.
And these fossilized leaves were like discovered from Kasauli Club, and they were identified as palm leaves by O.P. Mental, the famous. So the palm leaves from Kasauli, but you see, nothing much was done. And when we used to read textbooks, they were considered to mainly unfossiliferous. Kasauli sediments were considered to be unfossiliferous, and there are no fossils there. But that was the turning point in my career. And I was in first year student, and when I started exploring fossils there in the holidays, I saw the first. These were the palm leaves I discovered, but and then I am getting some lot of disturbance there. I'm not able. Someone is speaking in between. So, hello. Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible, Ritesh. But I think somebody is speaking in the middle. That's what I suspect. May I request everyone to mute the microphones, please, except Ritesh, who is speaking. Thank you so much.
So when I went to this was my first year, and I started to visit all the sections which I supposed Medlicott visited to hunt for fossils. But it took me around a year or so because I never had seen fossils in reality. But my instinct was to collect fossils from Kasauli, and it took me 1 year to get the first fossils. And after now we have identified about 27 fossilized wood sites, and the fossilized wood vary from 14 feet to 75 feet long. Trees we have found fossilized, and this is now Kasauli and surrounding areas are now considered not a single, but they are fossilized forests. We have now been able to, and these are some of the interesting fossilized woods, and some of them are from Ladakh also. This is one of the one of the longest fossilized tree which was preserved. This was about 13 or 14 feet long. you can see the Kasoli sandstone beds. They are aligned parallel to the bedding plane. So in the past, when global warming uprooted these trees, so they were aligned parallel to the bedding plane, and we are seeing. But this land was bought by someone, and they just wanted to build the retaining wall. We requested them that this was a very prestigious findings. This is part of my PhD thesis, and then this was preserved. This is how some preservation was done, and now it is a visitor's delight. Anybody going to Kasoli, they can see this without harming or collecting anything from here, because they have a guard there. So the fossilized tree is preserved. So this is one of my recent discoveries. First time, all these fossilized wood earlier till date which we have found were all silicified. So for the first time, we were able to get this organic trees, one tree, long tree, another two trees in this sandstone block. And this was how we broke all these huge blocks and got these organic fossilized trees. So this is the fossilized wood. And going back in time, then again, when I was a student, this was another great discovery at that time. In 1991, I discovered this fossilized flower fossils. So this was a remarkable discovery, delicate fossilized flowers preserved in the Kasoli siltstones, showing how calm the environment at the time of deposition was to preserve these beautiful fossils. And there was changes in the seasonality changes also there. We found these beautiful preserved leaves, then gastropods, huge numbers of them. These are very beautiful preserved Combretum species, Garcinia, then Gluta, Rhinogene, Trichisium. So these are some of about 6 species which I found after Medlicott in 1864 had discovered palm leaves. So palm leaves, what was the environment of Kasoli? That was always a puzzle. Now these species which I have mentioned are today nowhere found in Himalayas. They are found and confined to Indo-Malayan region, Indonesia and Malaysian regions, or in the Andaman Nicobar Islands. So what does this mean? This simply means that the Kasoli sediments were deposited not where we are finding it today, but they were deposited very near to the equator, maybe 4 degrees or 11 degrees north of equator. So these papers, these findings I published in 1994 in a seminar in a geological survey conducted by Geological Survey of India in Lucknow, and these findings about the timing of collision, I again presented it in fossils from Kasoli and Neoma. Neoma is in Ladakh, so we found almost similar type of fossils in both the locations. And what was the paleolatitude significance again in Lucknow in 2015. I also found for the first mammals of rhinoceros fossils. Then these are unios, bivalves, roots of plants, huge numbers of them, insect wings. So diverse assembly of fossils. So this is very interesting. I was still a bachelor's BSc student. In the books I was reading, Kasoli is unfossiliferous. And on the other hand, contrary to this, I was finding the largest collection of diverse fossil assemblage, which we are finding in the Himalayas Kasoli sediments. These are the logs of woods. So these on-site preservations of geosites is an important feature which can associate children with these fossils, and they can know how the fossils look like, and this interests more than setting these fossils in the museum. So geosites and geoparks important for geoheritage preservations of this area, but not much has been done. So this is the longest tree. This is about 60 feet fossilized tree which I found. These are charophytes. Now this is very interesting. Earlier when I discovered this, there was no building here, and this is the location of the charophyte. This was the Shiv Mandir, and I found somewhere here. Now recently I again went to this. The laugh is because this gentleman who constructed this building thought that this mountain will fall, and he covered the entire charophyte locality. So in case we don't have these laws to preserve our geoheritage sites, all these sites precious sites are lost because of ignorance, and someone will construct retaining wall, or someone will construct roads, and they are lost with time. So there is urgent need to preserve this. Now, after these discoveries, then I had never seen the geological map before I discovered all these fossils. And then when I started my PhD, I started seeing these geological maps. And then this is, there are Sabatu Formation resting below the, in the base. But we have Sabatu marine formations directly in contact with Kasoli sediments also. There are places in Gadkhal where that is in contact. Sabatu Dakshai is red colored.
Ritesh, 15 minutes up.
Okay, sir. Okay, no problem. So we have this dating of Kasoli was done by me on the basis of the Charophytes around Equatorian age. So 20 million years around. So this is again the panoramic view. This is Sabatu Formation, Dakshai Formation, and Kasoli Formation. We get the continuous sequence here. There is no break here, and the Shivalik formations that should be at the top here somewhere, but we never find any contact of Kasoli Formation with Sabatu Formation, Shivalik Formation. Shivalik Formation is directly in contact with Sabatu Formation here, and main boundary fault is the place where it is there. And we drilled a borewell there to study the that is another aspect now. So this is a traverse showing the entire gradation, gradual transition from marine, shallow marine, coastal beach, and land conditions, and then near coastal environment of the entire this Techian Himalayan sequence here. So this is again, now I'll just hurry up with these slides. These are Dakshai formations and contact. Here we find some volcanic remnants also. These are characteristics, Dakshai sediments. Verticality of the beds is a peculiar feature here. Other than being red in color, I am going down into and this is slicken sites, some ripple marks, very well preserved. They can all form part of the geoparks which you plan to decide the Paleozoic horizons. You can see how the soil forming processes have been accumulated here, and very, very interesting things happening. Anybody, any child can see all this. So these are the quartzite sandstones representing the beach environment. And I was lucky enough, for the first time, I was able to find oysters and wood fossils together in one rock. So signifying that near coastal environment was there. And this is Dakshai Formation. This is Sabatu Formation, and we see this folding here, the last phase of how the Tethys gradually shuttered up. Landslides have always given opportunity, and the forelaining has exposed a lot of landslides here, and we have discovered a lot of fossils as well. These are some of the oysters, beautiful, preserved them, bivalves, all courtesy landslides and due to forelaining here. These are bivalves. These are in situ fossils, and this is one of the beautiful preserved rock. The whole boulders was full of bivalves and mollusks like this, you know. We have some ripple marks. I was able to, last year I was able to find these from the, now Sabatu formations are in direct, here in this section, are in direct contact with the corals, and further ahead in Solan, I was able to find these beautifully preserved meteorites, about 1.5 billion years. So we see 20 million years, 50 million years, and 1.5 billion years. So the entire contrast and how these different geological formations are placed against each other make me feel that this was Himalayas are nothing but geological graveyard, which I have presented a paper on also. So geotracks and geosites where in situ fossils can be preserved. That is, now I'll just hurry up with the important information about different ports. After during my PhD, I also joined hydrogeologist in Himachal government.
2 minutes more.
Okay, sir. And these are beautiful preserved ports, you know. So interesting things about these ports were that there were two wells in these ports. Till date, they're made about 1,000 years ago, but they were made from sandstone, Kasoli sandstone, top of the hills, two wells. Still, nothing has lost other than some men deliberately taking these stones to make their own houses. And doing so, I was able to get into the. Then we worked in Ladakh. We went into Guinness Book of World Records, and now I just hurry up with last few slides. Now this is again, I got an opportunity to drill a well in Sanawar school, and then I saw this entire. This was about 1847. This was built. You see how beautiful the sandstones were used. Kasoli sandstones were used to build these structures. No, we don't require paints. We don't require any repair, and these buildings still stand test of time in summers and winters. And another important aspect which fascinated me was the railway tracks. This was again built about 100 years, more than 100 years ago. Today, this is a UNESCO heritage site. But important aspect was, I'll just hurry up. There were about 900 bridges, 103 tunnels. One is unfunctional now. But you see how magnificently they have used the sandstones to build these bridges. They are 3 tiers, 4 tiers, 5 tiers bridges, and still date, more than 120 years, these are still functioning very well. So that is the engineering and the geological aspect, and how beautifully they have carved these hills. Without this project was completed in about 5 years times, and a tribute, a railway museum is constructed in Shimla. This was because Captain Budog was not able to complete the tunnel, the longest tunnel. He started from both sides, but he was not able to complete that. There was a saint, Mr. Bhalku, and he helped in alignment of the train and entire railway track there. And this museum is dedicated to his research and a tribute to him. So this was the Budog. However, the Budog station was named after that colonel who was not able to complete that. These are the arcs, beautifully arcs. So instead of using these irons, arcs are used to make beautiful structures. You know, these are again some of the 5 tiers bridges there. So now, in comparison to this, we have the 4-laning work started in now. But these 4-laning structures are disaster because I think they have not consulted any geologist. That is a statement I'm making, and that is for sure, because the type of retaining walls they are constructing and the type of digging of mountains they have done is, anybody can say that no geologist was constructed, because they could have easily avoided 10 to 12 feet of cutting of these mountains if they have consulted a proper geological investigation was done. So these are debris. They can create havoc in near future. So all the they make some retaining walls. They cut these roads. They make some retaining walls, and the next year these retaining walls are falling. They're in Sabatu. So proper geological ignorance has caused so much landslide, land degradations. This project, now I remember, 100 kilometers of railway track was constructed in 5 years, 900 bridges and 103 tunnels. Now in this, only one tunnel and 39.14 kilometers, and 5 years have already passed, and still we are always seeing these landslides. The school buildings are in trouble. Now the railway, some portions, railway tracks are also in trouble because they have cut these mountains in such a way that has called. Now you see, last slide, these are almost completed now. Now you see, this is sandstone. Now they are cutting the sandstone and again putting this retaining wall of sandstone here. This is the blunder which they are creating, and this is what has caused so much delay, and the project cost has escalated. You see, now this 39.1 kilometers, this is 96 kilometers. This was started in 1989 and completed in 1903, 5 years. Now you see, 2015 it was started, and till date nothing has been done. Only what has been done is 800 crores. It was approximately 800 crores. Now it has increased to 1200 crores because of blunders of the contractors and the engineers, NH1, who are doing it. So an effort was made by us in when BJP government was there in 2010, 2008, 2009. I met him, and then in Ladakh, and they made me a member of this government, and we identified this geo-fossil park with Arun Sharma ji, and a sanction of about 7.8 crore rupees, approximately 8 crore rupees was done to give a geoheritage status to Kasoli, and the findings which I had. So I wanted all these fossils which I had, the largest collection I have, to be displayed somewhere in Kasoli, so they agreed, and the museum was supposed to be done. But again, that's not so easy. What happened was then permission was cantonment was taken, and cantonment board also gave the nod because Kasoli is a cantonment, and these permissions were given. Then again, it was not so easy. NJT, National Green Tribunal, came in from somewhere. I think they don't have any geologist with them, and they will do anything but do whatever is concerned with geological aspect. So they just, I don't know what they came. Everything was done. The building was done. Water, we took out water also, groundwater there. And when the building was about to be made, they abandoned it. So this was Geopark. Hello, am I audible? Hello.
Yes, Ritesh, you are audible.
Okay, so I'm
Yes,
just concluding
please,
now. I'm concluding now. So this Geoheritage Museum project was scrapped. Can you just imagine the first geopark, 8 crore rupees already sanctioned, building land allocated, and this NJT, because of NJT and no geological GSI never worked on anything, and nobody supported, and this project was scrapped by it because NJT put some objections and something like that happened and it never materialized. So I didn't give up there. And what happened was, now I am making this, I purchased land. I'm making this Earth Science Center here. It is very near to Kasoli in Dhangyari. The building is almost complete. Now I have almost completed the second floor also. Now interiors are all is being planned. We would have completed this year, but because of Corona, no one is visiting, and now rains have started. And so this is, I have used this entire, earlier I made this museum about here. I wanted to make it here, but I used the entire Kasoli sandstone to make this. I made these beautiful arcs here, and but this area was only 2,000 square feet, so I made this around, now this is about 10,000 square feet of area which will have this museum, which I am planning to construct. This is entire funding is done by me, and now it's almost on the completion, almost complete now. So we have the fireplace, entire whatever stones, applications of Kasoli sandstone was done. I have tried to do, this is a chimney, working chimney here, arcs beautifully preserved, and how stones, we don't require any maintenance, no paints. So this is how we are planning to make the Geoheritage Museum here in Kasoli. So by this, I end my presentation. Thank you for hearing me.
A nice overview of various geoheritage sites and the wonderful, fossil wood, the brewery, the ancient water tanks, sanitarium, railway bridges, etc. And also you brought out the importance of geologists in any of these projects, which is utterly lacking nowadays. And we greatly appreciate your initiative to start a museum with your own funding. That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
It is so nice. You have so nicely explained the geology and all those monuments you have shown. So you see, in a geopark, as you are aware better than me probably, see, among the nuts and bolts, it is other than geology. We require archaeology, culture, and anthropology and history wherever possible. And it is great that you yourself have your own very well established museum. I think that, but for Corona, I would have been there in Himachal now. So kindly, can you tell us, suppose a person wants to see the geoheritage or geopark which you described, how many days do you think on a tour? Say he will stay at Kasauli or Chandigarh, whichever you suggest. So in the morning you go by bus, by evening you reach a place. Like that, will it be done in 2 days, do you think? I have completed. Please.
Hello.
Dr. Ritesh, yes, please. Go ahead.
Sir, thank you very much. Yes, sir, you can complete it in 2 days. It will
Go
take
ahead.
about 2 hours from Kasauli, from Chandigarh to Kasauli. But en route, you can see the entire section which I showed you. You can see the archaeological sites. You can see the main boundary fault. You can see the contact between Sabatu and the Shivaliks. You can see the entire transition from Sabatu formation, that is the marine sequence, to coastal sequence, to the beach environment, to the land environments, to the soil forming process. So in one day, while growing from Chandigarh, and by the time you reach Kasauli, you can see the entire geological section of whatever I have spoken. One day, and then you can stay in Kasauli, or because that's a heritage site, and then you can visit what all places I have shown you. Other than that, also there are some graveyards also beautiful. But if someone is really interested in that history of that also, but other than this, the next day can be of specific sites, or planned to my museum site, which I'm planning, or specifically if someone is interested in some marine fossils, we can show them the marine sections. If someone is interested in, because we have found some whale fossils also, we have found shark also, we crocodile fossils have been reported. So rich rodents have been reported from here. So it's a gradual transition, and you can say the encyclopedia of the entire how the things were happening when the sea was squeezing and land conditions were forming. So entire transition from marine to non-marine, and then flooding events, the paleo flooding events can be documented here. How the trees were behaving. So entire thing can be done in a day, and the next day can be a specifically designed or planned for people with their specific interest. If they don't have any interest, then a general, because we have some Dakshai formation. All these are type sections named after Kasoli, Sabatu, and Dakshai formation. So we can go there. We have these sports. We have in Dakshai we have a very historic jail museum also, which has a history of itself. But besides that, it is a wonder how they have used the sandstone for making these soundproof and elaborative prisons, air conditioned prisons. And history has it that Gandhiji also stayed there, and Nathuram Godse also stayed there. And besides, there were Irish soldiers who had done some mutiny. They also. So we have a great scope of making. We have this. If someone is interested in doing the railway track, then a railway track can be organized. Geoengineering, yes, geoengineering can be done. If someone is interested in the Saraswati, then Saraswati beginning, the Ramayana, yes, there are Ramayana connections. So right from our ancient civilizations, the beginning, the civilizations of Saraswati to Ramayana times. I don't have any evidence of Mahabharata, but yes, maybe sometime. But other than that, the geological aspect, we have billion years. I was able to find these stromatolites, and so these illuminated
Ritesh ji,
fossils can be done in 2 days. Or if someone is specifically done, then it can be done in maybe one more extra day could make him more relaxed, But 2 days are good enough.
Ritesh
Minimum
ji,
2 days.
Ritesh ji, just a minute. You see, VP Mishra Saab has sent you a message, a question. I'll read it for you. Fossil wood log is just silicified. Does it show internal vessel structure? BSIP, Bir Balsani Institute.
Yeah.
Scientists say it does not show any biostructure. Go ahead, answer.
Yes, sir. VP Mishra, sir. Till last year, it was like that. I showed you some slides. We got this organic matter for the first time last year, and we are planning to do some investigation with the BSIP now, and we have invited them to come here and study this organic matter, because for the first time, earlier, as I said in my talk also, that earlier all the fossilized wood which we were finding were all silicified. But for the first time, organic matter has been preserved. And if I go back in size, these organic materials are very well preserved with the internal structure. Yes, the carbonized material has been preserved. So possibility of, for the first time, of identifying what these fossilized wood are gain importance now. So that is a very important thing. And yes, BSIP is interested, and maybe if Corona would not have been there, some scientists would have come here, and the investigation would have started, because this is just last year discovery which we made.
या रितेश जी, फॉर योर इंफॉर्मेशन, माता ये मिश्रा साहब ने भेजा है
Yes,
कि
sir. इन्होंने बताया है, because when I was a student in doing my PhD, as I told you, Mishra ji and Mathur, and they all were doing the entire GSI team was doing independent research in Kasoli sediments also, but our site areas were different, and they have their own findings, but they have done research, but our fossils which he has written recorded, we recorded fossils from Kasoli formation in January, but I had done it in 1890s, 1987 से लेके 19 तक, तो मेरे पास तो largest collection तब से थी सर. They published it because I was a student, and 90 I think we had already published. My first paper was, I think, in 93, but in newspapers. If you talk about newspaper, it was being done in से 87 से लेके 88 89 से लेके मेरे पास न्यूज़पेपर्स कटिंग्स हैं, जहाँ पे ये सब मैं बता चुका हूँ कि ये सब फॉसिल्स थे, पर उस टाइम सिर्फ फॉसिल्स बताता था, जैसे पेड़ का या कुछ है. पर in 1993 was my first publication. 1994 my first publication. They only documented that there are some fossilized leaves, there are some fossilized woods, but not beyond that, But my research, when I did my research for PhD, then I was able to identify about 7 species. BSI has done a lot of work. Medlicott has done, BSIP has done a lot of work. I'm talking about the work which I have done and what I have done.
Okay, are there any other questions?
I have only tried to show all the fossils which made the difference in Kasoli, in building the environment of the Kasoli. So that was my aim of just showing these 6 specimens. Other than this also, I have got about maybe not identified, but maybe about 20-25 species which are still not identified. But that is a huge collection of fossils which I have. But that I have not published, but I'm just showing these fossils because these make the difference in establishing the environment of Kasoli. But I don't think that they have any such because जो इनका publication है उसमें सिर्फ यही था कि ये dicotyledon है, monocotyledon है, ये है वो है, और nothing specific which can show. Now my fossils directly shows that it was a near coastal environment.
Okay.
And this number 2, these have affinities with Indonesia and Malaysia, Andaman Nicobar Island, nowhere today found in Himalayas. So that is another aspect. So this is the paleo-environmental reconstruction which you're making. Third, all these are near coastal species. They're not present in today's altitude or environment, which we are seeing 30 degrees, about 28 to 30 degrees, the Kasoli, north of equator. So these are not, they could never grow in this environment.
Sure.
Or survive in this environment. So that is what I wanted to show. The seasonality, So that makes the difference, The जो मैंने आपको ये दिखाए हैं 6 species, so they take this entire Kasoli sequence to equator, near equator. So the entire full end concept goes for a 6. Entire books have to be rewritten. So that is what we are planning now. The timing of collision between India and China. So by Kasoli times, till Kasoli times, it is 100% sure India had not collided with China or the Tibetan Plate. They have never collided. So हाँ सर, 20 मिलियन साल तक 100% इंडिया का चाइना के साथ कोलिजन नहीं हुआ था. और ये मैं नहीं बोलता हूँ, ये फॉसिल्स बोल रहे हैं, जो मैंने ये 6-7 स्पेसिमेंस आपको बताए हैं. इस मॉडल पे हम काम कर रहे हैं. Thank you.
Now, Ritesh, let's ask participants if they had any questions, so that the discussion can continue.
Right, sir.
Right?
Sir.
Yeah. Are there any further questions for Dr. Arya? Or any other point that people would like to make? Yes, Dr. Ahluwalia.
Ritesh, a great geologist and a very enthusiastic geologist. I have just one question to ask him. Which of this stromatolite horizon he was showing? that didn't look like a stromatolite. It looked like a very young calcareous concretion. It didn't look like a biological biohomal structure. Over to Ritesh.
सर ये जो हमारे को मिला था, अगर इफ आई कैन शो यू,
Horizon, horizon
horizon-
बताओ, horizon क्या है?
हॉराइजन मैं वही बता रहा हूँ आपको, एक मिनट में लेट मी कंप्लीट। ये क्या है कि
I am starting my presentation. My title is Sites of Geoheritage in and around Dehradun. As I belong to Dehradun, I find there are so many problems here which I shall discuss, and these sites should be preserved. Dehradun is one of the modest sized city located in the state of Uttarakhand. It is situated in valley, and it is interim capital of Uttarakhand, sir, for past 20 years. The problem with the city is that in last 20 years there is a tremendous rise in population, which is about 30% per decade, and as a result of that population rise, every nook and corner of valley is being occupied by the persons who are coming from either from the different parts of the state or from within the state. This is the district map of Dehradun. Dehradun district starts from Rishikesh, Haridwar, and it goes up to Tuni. This is more than 100 kilometers long, 120 kilometers long, and this part is valley, sir. This is the map of the Dehradun Valley. This valley is about 2,000 square kilometer in area. This valley is situated at the junction of Outer Himalaya and Lesser Himalaya. South of the junction of the Outer Himalaya and Lesser Himalaya, this is the geological map of Himalaya. It is prepared by my student. The Doon Valley is somewhere here. Then next is the tectonic map of Himalaya. In this tectonic map, this blue color is Indo-Gangetic Plain, followed by light red color, which is the Outer Himalaya. Then orange color is the Lesser Himalaya. We are at the contact of Outer and Lesser Himalaya, and this is the geological map. Here, the Dehradun is situated somewhere here. The Outer Himalaya is made up of shivalik rocks, and Lesser Himalaya is made up of varieties of Precambrian rocks as well as some marine transgression rocks, which are of Permian age and then Eocene, Paleocene age. This is the geological map of state. Now, as far as geology of Dehradun is concerned, the valley floor is made up of dune gravel, which is of variable thickness. It is a prism-shaped body. Somewhere it is consolidated and somewhere it is loose material. So, where it is consolidated, particularly in the northern part of the valley, where it is quite thick, and towards the southern side, the dune gravels are loose. The consolidated part is known as dune gravels, which are 50,000 years and still older. The south of the valley is made up of the shivalik rocks, and shivalik is somewhere here. This is the shivalik formation, shivalik supergroup. This is made up of upper shivalik and middle shivalik. At very few places, particularly either in Yamuna Valley or also at very small locality in Dehradun, lower shivalik is exposed. To the north of this, there is a main boundary thrust. This to north of the main boundary thrust, Krol Nepe is exposed, and within the Krol Nepe, we have got the Amriphilites or Amri thrust rocks. This is the basic geological setup of the Doon Valley. We have got main boundary fault, and we have got the Himalayan frontal fault in the south, which is known as Mohan thrust. Then towards the east, we have got this fault is known as Ganga strike slip fault. This is the Yamuna strike slip fault. So this valley is nicely bounded by 4 major active faults. This is another geological map which is showing that the sediments brought out by the higher Lesser Himalayan reaches, upper part of the Lesser Himalaya, they are deposited as fens, geomorphic fens. This is the Doon fen, Donga fen. This is the central part is Doon fen, and eastern part is Bhogpur fen. So these are the three fens which are consolidated, and towards the north again we have got the Lesser Himalaya, south it is the Shivalik. In this map, some tectonic features are shown. Here you can see the thrust rocks of Amri, and then here the different faults are shown, and their drainage network is also shown partially here. Now, this valley, because it is situated at the junction of Outer Himalaya and Lesser Himalaya, it has so many unique characters that its geology is unique, because we get the two big divisions of Himalaya that are sutured at the main boundary fault. And if you go 30 kilometers south towards the UP side, then at Mohand we have got another this Himalayan frontal fault. So within say 30 to 40 kilometer, we have got Indo-Gangetic Plain, Outer Himalaya and Lesser Himalaya. And Lesser Himalaya is kept by metamorphic rocks. Probably they have come from the Higher Himalaya. So this is a unique geological setup. And if you go in the upper part, higher heights of the Dehradun district, there we get the very old Chakrata formation rocks, which are nearly 2000 million year old. Because of this unique setup and varieties of the stratigraphic formation, we have got so many heritage sites here. One is Sazdhara Sulphur Spring, which is very well known, then followed by Robbers Cave, Tapkeshwar temples. These three are the popular sites for tourists, and they are also for the geology students and geological workers. Then we have got main boundary fault. The main boundary fault is exposed at many places, but the problem with the main boundary fault I will come later on. And in this, then Himalayan frontal fault, it is exposed in the south. This is also a very good area for the geological excursion and for the general public, where we can show how the Himalaya mountain is evolved from low height to higher height. Then we have got very interesting in formation, that is the Cambrian, Precambrian contact is here, which is known as Toltal boundary locally, and this boundary is exposed in phosphorite mine. So this probably in 1992, International Commission came here, and when they were finalizing the global stratigraphic site type area, so they considered this location as one of the location for global stratigraphic type area. Then Tal Valley is located about 70 kilometers from Dehradun, where we have got varieties of formations. Then in Yamuna Valley, again we have got one dam is coming up along the Yamuna, across the Yamuna river at Lakhwar, and moving few kilometers north, we got good exposure of this Gosans. Then Chakrata formation, which is a very prominent formation of the Uttarakhand Lesser Himalaya. It is about 2000 million year old. Then this formation is deep water deposit, and it has got fleece type of rocks, and the sedimentary structure is so well developed that it can be considered as the type area for the fleece if detailed study is made. Now I am coming to one by one. This is the Sazdhara area. The Sazdhara area, the river is perennial. It is the Baldi river. The Baldi river is moderate sized river, and it is coming from the Lesser Himalaya, Mussoorie Hills, originating near Surkanda Devi Peak. If you see here, then lot of construction activity has taken place. This photo is taken few years back, and now it is highly congested area. This, because of congestion, the natural beauty of this is gone, and these sulfur springs, which is very famous all over the world, they are now dried up. This is the biggest problem, that we don't see the sulfur spring. This photograph was taken at least 5 to 6 years ago, but because of the construction and human population pressure, agriculture practices and other reasons, the sulfur springs are gone. Today, if you go to Sazdhara area, then we feel the sulfurous smell, and this sulfurous is coming from seepage of water, which is not as falling like this, which is shown in this map. To attract the tourist, they have constructed this a pond near to this side, but that pond is today it is dried, so there is no uh, falling of the sulfur water from the sulfur springs. So this is need to be revived if you want to maintain the tourist flow and then natural beauty. And you can see the construction here. So the natural charm has gone and the springs have dried up. This is instead of sulfur springs, what they have done, that they have put some retaining wall here across the river valley. So small ponds are created, and when one go in this pond, then he feels some sulfurous smell, but it is not that strong as it used to come from the water. This is the peak tourist season time when lot of these bunds are made across the river, and we can see many tourists are bathing here, and all over the places we see the construction. So as a result of construction, the natural sites that is totally damaged, and two 200 meters away from that we get a landslide. It is the now highly landslide prone area because of the population pressure. This is the landslide is occurring in the Crole limestone. It is basically a dolomite. It is belonging to Crole B. Crole C, not B. In opposite side of the river, I mean on the right bank, we have got stalactite, stalagmite. These stalactite, stalagmites, they have developed in the limestone caves. There are many caves which are of small size, and there may be some 10 feet to 15 feet. That's all it is in the maximum length, and few feet in depth. And the height of the caves is varying from place to place. It is somewhere 5 feet, somewhere it is 7 feet, 8 feet. That is the maximum. And the caves, there are 2 to 3 levels of caves that indicates the upliftment of the area. So at least now we can preserve these caves. Now what happening in the cave is that either people are doing some commercial activity, or they have put up some small temples like that. So in course of time, if things goes on like this, then there is a possibility that they may convert into pakka shops if no action is taken or no is prepared. And if you move 2 kilometers away, then this is very interesting site. It is the contact of black chert. Here we can see it is chert and shell. Now in this we get the gypsum deposits. This area is faulted one, and it is a Sherco fault. This fault has crushed the rocks here, and as a crushing, we have got lot of pore spaces and works and cavities. In the works and cavities, we get the gypsum mineralization. So these white patches, they are the gypsum, and this gypsum, of course, it cannot be mined commercially because in the ore or in the gypsum mineral, lot of extra other material is there. That is the waste. And again, if you move some inside, I mean, there is a Chamasari village. If you go towards the Chamasari village from Sajdhara, which is about 1.5 kilometers from the main Sajdhara, we can see the faulting in the Crole. There is a beautiful fold, and it is being cut. So the natural heritage of Sajdhara was once upon a time, it was quite marvelous. But now, because of the commercial activity, this is slowly going away, and a lot of houses have come up, or shops have come up, or hotels have come up, or resorts. There are so many other activities. So if the construction goes like this, then in some years, whatever I have shown, they might either concealed, or they might be hidden under the construction of the civil features. Next, moving over to the Tapkeshwar temple. It is 5 to 6 kilometer away from 6 kilometer from the Dehradun. This temple is at the base of the river. This river is known as Tamas River. Somebody call it Nalotra Nala. Somebody call it Tons. There are two Tons River. One is the famous mighty Tons River, and this is a minor Tons. So there are three names for this river: Tons, Tamas, and Nalotra Nala. This area is made up of dune gravels, consolidated dune gravels. It is the narrow gorge. We can see here the gorge is somewhere it is very narrowing, somewhere it is widening, and it shows the several episodes of upliftment. This one, the present river floor is here. The past river floor is here. So we can count number of upliftment episode in this place. Again, same thing is happening with the Tapkeshwar temple area because it is the religious site. So it is used for religious purpose, and so many temples have come up. Say 20 years or 25 years back, there was only one temple, and there was under natural condition. Now the temple is modified, and around this site which I am showing, there are number of temple have come up, and slowly this site is modified. So this gorge and natural beauty is slowly it is diminishing. This is the horizontal bedded dune gravels, and we can see here many grooves. These grooves indicates the former river level. So it is also from geological point of view excellent place where one can see the epiogenic upliftment in Doon Valley. Then I am coming to the main boundary fault area. The hills which are visible here, they are abruptly rising from the Dehradun plain valley floor. So almost the height at this place is about 600 meter or 700 meter, and this place height is 2000 to 2500 meter. So within a few kilometers distance, crow fly distance, the height is rising from nearly 1800 meters. Now this upliftment of the hills is because of the main boundary fault, and this is the place where the wall is constructed. Here the main boundary fault is passing through along the road, and about say 15 years back, we can see the main boundary fault was going like this. But now the main boundary fault is concealed not only at one place but entire in a stretch of 200 meter. The retaining wall is constructed, and beyond that also, beyond these hills, also retaining walls are present. So the biggest problem now is that when 20 years back or 15 years back, I used to take my student here to show the main boundary fault, that is now totally invisible because of the retaining wall. This is the exact place where the main boundary fault was concealed. In this map, this is the location of main boundary fault which was dipping, and the main boundary fault has come here in contact with the dune gravels. So this beautiful site that has totally disappeared or hidden in the retaining wall. This is the main boundary fault in Sajdhara. Here we can see the crust Chandpur phyllite. The problem with the phyllite is that it is very well crushed, and we can see a section of 30 to 40 meter of height, but the main boundary fault exact contact with the dune gravel or the shivalik is not visible. Only in the certain portion in the center part of the main boundary fault we can see this as evidence, the crushing of the rocks, and somewhere in this quartz veins are present, and then we can see the different types of joints and change in bedding character of the foliation character of the phyllite. Somewhere it is a cisterce rock, green cyst like rock. Here we can see the quartz vein, and then we can see the change in depth here. Then there are joints, and because of the crushing we can see the small flakes, they are coming out. So it is a brittle fault. The brittle fault has got somewhere quartzite bands, and in these quartzite bands, they are less deformed, and this is more deformed. Phyllite is more deformed. So again, this site is not very good for study. Now we coming to the Himalayan frontal fault, which makes the contact between the Indo-Gangetic plain and the outer Himalaya, that is the Shivalik. This is the Shivalik and this is the Doon Reval. It is just see the vertical slope. This vertical slope indicating the passing of the main boundary Himalayan frontal fault, and in this just moving few meters towards the hinterland side, we can see the big boulders of Shivalik. Fairy balls and stones are here. Then this is the middle Shivalik rocks, and it is you can see the big boulders here. So that indicates the might of the river. Now this site is relatively undisturbed, so this can be used as a type, tourist geoheritage site if proper maintenance is done. So it can be shown that the contact between two units, that is the outer Himalaya and the Indo-Gangetic plain. Now this is the beautiful outcrop of the Shivalik sandstone, where we can see the graded bedding, change in depth, and change in behavior of the joint patterns, variation in joint patterns of the middle Shivalik formation, middle Shivalik sandstone. Now we coming to another location which is known as Tal Valley. Tal Valley is situated between Haridwar and Rishikesh area, to the east of Haridwar and Rishikesh. We have to go to Tal Valley by crossing the Veerbhadra Barrage. From Veerbhadra Barrage, we take the canal route and moving 5 to 6 kilometers towards the downstream side, we go to Bhogpur Talla village, and then we move inside. Say 3 or 4 kilometers. By moving inside, we come across excellent exposure of the main boundary fault. Here the main boundary fault has burned the rocks, which we can see dark gray, bluish gray rocks, and in this dark bluish gray rock, selenite crystals are found. They are of variable size. Some are 4 to 5 millimeter, and rarely we get, if we dig this section, then 2 centimeter size of selenite, perfectly transparent, perfect from crystallographical point of view. Crystals are available here, and within this burnt zone or fault plane, we also get the quartz veins. This is a distant view. Here we can see the triangular facets, which are the indicating the faults, presence of the fault here, and then we can see change in height here. So there is an abrupt change in the height from here to here. So this is the excellent section of the Tal Valley, where we can see the main boundary fault, and this is the Tal River. If we move inside the Tal River, then we come across fossiliferous Kakara formation, fossiliferous Subatu formation. Then we come across the proper Tal formation, which is the on the basis of that Tal River, the Tal formation name is given. So this Tal River is there, but the Tal formation is 2 kilometers from this place towards the inner side, and in the Tal formation we get the folds. If we move further towards the upstream side, then we get there Subatu formation and Kakara formation. They are again repeated because of the tectonics, and further moving upward, then we get that Amri thrust, that is the metamorphic rock, sericitic phyllite or sericitic cyst, something like mica sericite cyst. So this Tal Valley is the excellent location where we can see the fossiliferous formation, we can see the sedimentary rocks, we can see the varieties of the structural features. So it is a ideal candidate for geoheritage site or geopark. Within say 5 to 6 kilometer, we get varieties of the geomorphic features, variety of the sedimentary deposit, because the valley floor this to this is more than half kilometer in width. So I consider that this place should be properly preserved by combined effort of geoheritage interested people. Now, another very interesting site is this Lakwar Dam site in Yamuna Valley. This Yamuna Valley, this is the Yamuna River. The Yamuna River is flowing in a meander course, and this point a dam is coming up. The dam is built on the basic igneous rocks, basic dike, which is about 800 meter wide, and this is the dam axis is constructed. Dam axis is passing through that center of the dike. So on igneous rock, a foundation is planned, and in a few years the dam will come up. If we move further in this, then 4 to 5 kilometer again towards the upstream side, we come across the Gosans. Beautiful Gosans are present in the fault plain. Then we can see the different colors of Gosans, and the crushing of the rocks, shear zones, joint planes, then fault plane striations, then lineations. There are many things here. Now again another beautiful Gosans with multicolor hues, multi-hues, brown color, orange color, deep blue color, white color, yellow color, orange color. So many colors are there. So it indicates the hidden mineral deposit. The GSI should explore the deposits in detail here. So after this, I come to the another area, that is the Chakrata region, which I talked in the beginning. This area is about 95 to 96 kilometers from Dehradun. The all green color area is known as shown here is the Chakrata formation. It is developing across the entire state, particularly in the Garhwal Himalaya. This Chakrata is the town is here, and this is the type area of the Chakrata formation. In this Chakrata formation area, we have got deep water sedimentary rock, which are the siltstone and shale formed long back, say 2000 million years ago, but they contain excellent sedimentary structure. Almost all sedimentary structure we read in the textbook, they occur here in the textbook style. So if a detailed study is made of this area, then it can become a future type area of the fleece deposit in our country or as well as in the world, because the formation
Professor
is very
Biyani,
and yes sir.
Will you be able to conclude in the next 3 minutes or so?
Oh yes sir.
Okay, thank you so much.
So this is an ideal candidate for geopark, particularly of the its fleece deposit. Then also some tectonic features are here. Chakrata thrust, Gaze thrust, 3/4 thrust are passing from here, and then towards the north, moving few kilometers, we have got the typical Mandhali village, which is known as Mandhali formation in Lesser Himalaya. That is the Pyrite So this is the excellent location for the geological tours, particularly for geology students who are interested in sedimentary petrology and deep water sedimentary rock as well as shallow water sedimentary rock. Now, this is the Maldevta area, sir. I don't have a good photograph of this area because due to lockdown condition, I could not bring it. This road is going towards the Maldevta village, from Maldevta village to here. If you go further, then we find here Surkhet place are PPCL mines. Now, in this road, we get the quartzite, that is the Nakthat quartzite, followed by Blaney formation, followed by infracoal slate, Kroll and Tal. Now, this formation starts here and goes up to here. The Nakthat quartzite is 1800 million year old, and the Tal formation is Cambrian. Within the Tal formation, we have got trilobita fossils which are exposed at some other location at the Jabarkhet area that is near to the Mussoorie, 5 to 6 kilometers from Mussoorie. There is a small village Jabarkhet, and in Jabarkhet people have reported the trilobita fossil. But the Maldevtia area is significant because here at the contact of Kroll and Tal formation, we get the conodont fossil, and these conodont fossil marks the beginning of the Cambrian. So it is the place where Cambrian Precambrian contact exists, and that contact is very remarkably seen here. And now an international commission of stratigraphy has visited this place in 1992, and they saw this area, and it was considered as one of the site for the type section of the Cambrian Precambrian boundary. But they favored the Newfoundland area of USA as the type area, and they considered this as a reference area. Still, of course, the Maldota mine or PPCL mine that was producing phosphorite, that is closed. But if we say open the edit and just for 30 meters, then we can see the excellent contact of the Kroll and Tal formation, that is the Precambrian and Cambrian. Tal is considered as Cambrian, and Kroll is considered as Precambrian. And Kroll is Neoproterozoic, and Nagthat, which is the beginning here, it is 1800 million year old. So there is a complete history of 1800 million year to 500 million year, and in between there is a gap of 1000 million year. As some worker says, like Dr. Azmi says, that there is a gap unconformity and between the Blaney and Nagthat. So that 1000 million year gap is a remarkable gap in Indian stratigraphy. So this area is very, very important, not only from economic point of view, that is there was a phosphorite mine, and but stratigraphy wise also very important, and then of course limestone and gypsum is there. So then we can also develop this mine as a tourist spot, because it is the underground mine, and then towards the top, I mean this side, there is a village called Surkhet. So here the open cast mine was there. So at one places for the same phosphorite there was open cast mine, and when we come to the riverbed level there was underground mine. So it is a unique place. So these are the things which I want to be considered for a geoheritage site. So thank you very much. I am thankful to Sri Ravi sir for supporting me and bearing all the things. Then Dr. Vipin Chanalia, Dr. Sheetal Kanodia, and Dr. Abhishek Gupta. Thank you very much, sir. So I end my
Thank you so
presentation here.
much. Okay. Dr. Biani, thank you so much for your presentation. And this brings us to the end of this the third presentation. We don't have much time for discussion, but if there is any question, maybe we can take one, maybe or two very quickly. There is something.
May I have a?
Yeah.
Can I
Sure.
ask? Dr. Biani, thank you for a wonderful presentation, and it was very elaborate and highly educating. I just wanted to know one thing from you, probably because the exhaustive description. I'm afraid that probably the mention of Gaussian has didn't get much space. Probably the evidences which you have shown, not very convincing. Could you elaborate whether you have got a lateritic profile as connected with the horizon above water, or the sulfide mineralization which is associated with Gaussian? Have you seen any? Have you, or can you elaborate on that?
We have seen minor presence of this malachite azurite there.
Yeah, that is probably was needed. Yeah.
And sir, because of the steep slope, laterite profile cannot develop there. And fault plane is that the area which I have shown where the Gaussians were there. It is in the Aglar fault. The fault is about 40 kilometers long. So it is a vertical fault, probably a strike slip fault, and it is probably mineralization has taken place in that fault, because in Himalayan region we find at so many places the mineralization.
Right.
Gypsum we get, sorry sir, lead we get in the Hanuman Shakti area, and copper we get in Janki Shakti area, which is about 100 kilometers from there, which is my PhD area.
I see. You mentioned some pyrite also.
Yeah, pyrite.
Is it connected with this fault? No.
No, sir. No, not economical at all.
It's
It is
just
dissolving in water and then giving sulfurous smell in Crore limestone.
Okay. So the fault is actually the controlling mineralization of sulfide. So, and you have got chalcopyrite. Malachite.
Chalcopyrite is of course there, but in Hanuman Shakti, sir. Here I have not seen chalcopyrite.
Malachite, you meant?
Hanuman Shakti is just...
no, malachite.
No, malachite I have seen here. This is
in the
Yamuna Bridge area. The location I have shown, it is near, because it is a almost deserted area. Nobody is there, no village is there. But to move 500 meters, then we get the Yamuna Bridge. So it is just on the top of the Yamuna Bridge. This location is there.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Bihari.
Okay, sir.
It was wonderful presentation.
Thank you so much. And it was wonderful that Dr. Biyani was able to come up with this presentation without any further issues and problems. So to sum up, we have had 3 presentations on the Himachal Himalaya, Dehradun Himalaya, and Kasauli traverses. And all the 3 presentations bear testimony to my statement that India has several geoheritage sites with immense potential. I think the way ahead will be to plan things in a proper way and coordinate with governmental agencies, do more work so that our plan, our dream of putting up geoheritage, geoparks will come into reality. So I think, it was a Sunday evening very well spent on this webinar. And to say thank you to all the people concerned, we have Dr. Wadhwan to do the honors. Dr. Wadhwan, please. The discussion can continue through email and also on our GeoHeritage WhatsApp group, right? So this is only the beginning of a very formal way of, doing presentations, and this should open up the gateway for further discussions and to concretize some real issues. All right. And also in the forthcoming IGC, the International Geological Congress in Delhi in November 2020, we have a complete symposium on geoheritage and geoparks and related issues. And those of you who have already submitted abstracts will be making your presentations.
A very good evening to all of you. We had 3 very, very informative and excellent presentations by real experts. Dr. Bhargav has been the guru for all of us in GSI. He has been a guru in the training institute and still very active. It was very, very impressive and very inspiring to listen to him. Then other 2 talks were also very, very informative. But my small observation is, although these are very exciting areas, there are certain sites which are of national importance from geoscientist point of view, from geoheritage point of view, and there are some sites which are important from regional point of view. See, for the national sites, we have to have something very unique, which is very distinctive. But for regional sites, there are many such sites. They need to be selected and protected for our educational purpose and again developing geotourism at the state levels. So therefore we need to distinguish this. I'm really very happy Dr. Ritesh Arya is developing that museum, apart from having certain excellent natural sites in that Kasauli area, and he is actually showing the way how a private enterprise can really lead to development of a good geoheritage site like this in small geopark. But then entire thing has to be delineated properly. We need to define the boundaries. I mean, what I could listen to this presentation is that we are having a long wish list. This long wish list has to be more focused on certain sites which can form a particular coordinated route and one site leading to the next, and good literature has to be developed on that. So I think it's a very good beginning. Thank you very much, Professor Shankar sir. Thank you, Mundaveli sir, and the entire team. It's a great effort. I'm really grateful to all the speakers and all the participants once again. Thank you very much. Back to you.
Yeah.
Dr. Ravi Garu, thank you very much for all your initiative and help. It was tremendous. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Bye bye, everybody. Bye bye. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.